Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I want to go back to Mr. Scott's opening comments regarding the explosion of tips and calls into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Again, the numbers bear repeating. In 2024, the number of tips that came into the system was 6,800. In 2025, the number was 440,000, was made just in the first half of the year. And again, the center's been around for 40 years. This committee actually authorizes its operation and funding year in and year out. We just actually enacted the latest update in 2024. But clearly, the system has just been rocked by an avalanche of incidents that are happening. And Ms. Reese-Givens, I mean, you alluded to this in your testimony. I mean, what's the response that Congress needs to make here to hold technology companies accountable, help victims, and assist these organizations to deal with really, I think is clearly a crisis?
Thank you for the question and for highlighting this important issue. This is an issue not only for young people and their parents, but it is also showing up in school communities as well. Our survey data this year show that 12% of students knew of non-consensual intimate imagery depicting somebody in their school community. So that's one of their peers, it's one of their teachers. And right now we really have a lack of resources for teachers knowing how to respond. Some schools are leaning into discipline. Of course, that is part of the equation, but we also need to make sure that people are talking rigorously about prevention and support for victims, including mechanisms for taking this stuff down. There are some laws on the books that can be helpful. So when imagery depicts minors, it is illegal content that must already be taken down. Companies can be held liable for keeping it up and for generating that content. In addition, Congress recently passed the Take It Down Act to make it easier for people to take down these images of themselves by filing a request. Just yesterday, the Senate passed the Defiance Act, which has now made its way over to the House for consideration, which makes it easier for people to sue when they are a victim of this. But again, putting it just on the shoulders of individual victims is not a solution. We also need companies really leaning into their obligations here. This involves a couple different things. One is about the capacity of your tool to generate these images in the first place. What are the tools in check around the creation of nude images, around the uploading of images of real people and how you allow those to be manipulated? Second is around the detection when those outputs are coming out. Why are you stopping it, and how does that work? And then third, of course, are social media platforms and other places where these images can be disseminated. Oftentimes, it is already a violation of the terms of service for that to happen, but we see that companies are not rigorously enforcing those terms. We advocate directly to the companies to do that. Even where it is not necessarily illegal content, but is still deeply inappropriate, they should be creating a safe community for their users and living up to the promises they're telling their users about what they do.
Thank you for that answer. When we enacted that recent update for the center's work, there was, basically a budget sort of trajectory, which was fairly steady. But obviously, the work that they have been taking on, really just within the last year, is just completely been overtaken. So, clearly there's a cost here. There's a social cost to AI, which, we, again, as a society, have to sort of figure out who pays in terms of dealing with that. But, this is a completely consensus issue in terms of the center's authorities. It goes back 40 years, I think, as I mentioned earlier, and it should be, frankly, in my opinion, a consensus issue for industry as well as the political parties here in Washington. So, again, at some point, it comes down to the question of who pays, and it seems that industry has an obligation here, given the fact that there's a direct connection to the scaling rapidly, I think was what the chairman said about AI at the opening, and really what's also rapidly happening in terms of negative fallout.
No, sorry, I very much agree. And I think the question here is, both the technological development, so what are those safeguards that should be embedded into the tools, and then the will to actually follow through. It's one thing to write a good terms of service saying that you don't allow this on your platform. It's another to rigorously enforce it. One of the problems we have right now is lack of visibility into how platforms are complying with their terms of service. Some of them do kind of disclosures about it, but it's not a common practice, and we've actually seen some pullback in recent years. And so when we think about accountability, when we think what it is to make good on the promise you make to your customers and your users about the community that you are building online, about the value of these tools, how can we get far more information and honest disclosures around how these issues are being addressed in a rigorous way?
Thank you. I yield back.